dramatic shift in recent years from our imported oil. It used to be that the principal foreign supplier was Saudi Arabia, and a lot of other major suppliers were in the Middle East. We also got a lot from Mexico and Venezuela. As you can see, there's been a dramatic increase in imports from Canada. Canada now is our leading supplier of imported oil. That's good news. And if you're concerned about reliance on the Middle East, there's been a decline in Mexico and Saudi Arabia. And Nigeria is also a growing source of oil. So there's a shift in where our imported oil is going to come. And knowing this is going to be increasingly important from a foreign policy point of view, an environmental point of view. All of this is going to bear on our lives. So the good news is the U.S. is getting less oil from the Middle East and more from Canada. The bad news is we're getting more oil from Canada, and it's all crap. It's this crap. Tar sands oil. Most of it is tar sands oil. Now, if I had a lot of time, I would give you my reasons why I think this is an atrocity. I believe it's an atrocity. They're tearing apart northern Alberta to get at this stuff. There are two ways to get oil from tar sands. Strip mining, where you tear apart. These trucks are 6 stories high. Just the tires are 2 stories high, just to give you a sense of scale. Each tire costs like $50,000. To give you a sense, they strip mine vast areas and produce mammoth, and you have to use a lot of water in this process. So they are creating mammoth areas of polluted, toxic water wastes when this is all done. The water is pouring into local rivers, and there's evidence that it is causing a higher level of cancer among the native communities. This is an area largely inhabited by native people in northern Alberta. So this is an exceedingly dirty way of producing oil. It also produces vastly more carbon dioxide to produce. You can imagine why. Those are little yellow things, or 6-story high trucks down there. Digging it all up, processing it, produces a vast amount of carbon dioxide. This is the leading source of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions. Canada signed the Kyoto Protocol. It is going up rather than down, largely because of tar sands production. So every time we get oil from Canada, we're contributing to Canada's violation or failure to, worse, Canada's growing CO2 emissions and heating up the planet, not only here, but in Canada as well. So this is a highly destructive way of obtaining oil. This is a domestic policy issue because in order to obtain this stuff, it's not oil. People are going to say, oh, it's oil. It's not. It's crud. It is bitumen, and it is hard stuff. To make it into a liquid, you have to refine it, you have to process it, and that takes a lot of water, it takes a lot of energy. It takes, depending on who you talk to, the equivalent of 1 or 2 barrels of oil equivalent natural gas to heat it and process it for 3 barrels of oil equivalent out. So it's not really that much of a gain energy-wise, except it's a liquid, and we need liquids. If it's not completely refined, it's more corrosive than regular oil. So now the TransCanada company, the pipeline company, wants to build that dashed line from up at the very top of the screen on the left, a tar sands pipe down to Sioux City. and then use an existing line to Cushing in Oklahoma, and then down to Houston and Port Arthur to deliver partly refined tar sands for final processing, refining on the U.S. Gulf Coast. It's 2,000 miles. This more corrosive stuff going through pipelines, which will pass through the most important source of underground water in the USA, the Ogallala aquifer. Those of you who study water issues will know that this is vital to the food production in the USA, and there's a great worry of leakage because of the more corrosive nature of this fuel. This is up for the Obama administration. Because it's crossing international lines, it's a foreign policy issue, not just a corporate issue. The Obama administration will have to make a decision sometime this year about whether to go ahead. Environmentalists in the administration say this would be a catastrophe, not only because of the damage it would do in this country, but because of the contribution to global warming it will make in Canada. But of course, those people who say we should rely more on Canada for oil rather than the Middle East are saying it's a national security argument. Please come back to me later if you want to talk about this. My current feelings about Mr. Obama, much as I admire him in many respects, is he's going to cave in and make the wrong choice on this, which is to say he's going to approve this. We'll see. So the other source of oil that's growing is Nigeria. Nigeria has lots of oil, 7th leading supplier of oil. The problem is most of the oil comes from the Niger Delta region in the southern part of Nigeria, and there's an insurgency going on there. The insurgency is fueled by the fact that the area has been devastated environmentally by oil production. It has fouled all of the water supplies. If you picture I think I had a presentation last week on the Valdez disaster, Exxon Valdez disaster. Multiply that by 100 and stretch it over 40 years. That's what has happened to the Niger Delta region without any stoppage from the government, which is completely corrupted in the pockets of the oil companies, and they keep all the money as well. So people in the Niger Delta earn less than $2 a day at best, and they're revolted. They want to see environmental cleanup and a larger share of the oil profits. So the question is, how deeply do we want to get involved in this fight? The U.S. is already providing military aid to the Nigerian military. It's another potential counterinsurgency war. The Niger Delta is that area where the Niger River empties out. It's that area along the Gulf of Guinea. Down there you see all the oil symbols for the oil fields. It's a very swampy area. And just for your entertainment, those of you who saw Avatar, the horrible Colonel Quaritch was talking with the hero about the days he spent fighting in Nigeria. And I assume that that was a reference to the Niger Delta. The U.S. is becoming more deeply involved militarily in Africa with the creation of the U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM, in 2007, the first new U.S. overseas military command to be created since 1980, when the Central Command was created. Central Command was created to defend the Persian Gulf oil fields. This one, I believe, has its purpose was created to protect African oil fields. What are our other options? Right now, we still get oil from Mexico and Venezuela. But most of the oil we've gotten from Mexico comes from the Cantarell field. Produced about 2/3 of Mexico's oil. Was a giant field in its heyday. from around 1995 to 2005, was the second biggest producing field